Money Mindset.
I think that sounds alright.
This is Millennial Money Mindset. If you want the fruits, you need the roots. 10 books that blew my mind. So we're going through 10 books that blew my mind, changed my mindset, and 10 books I'd highly recommend you read. So today we're talking about The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama. So I was given this book in Australia and it stayed with me ever since. So I was traveling after university in 2003, it was, so ages ago. I was given this book and someone told me to read it, and I was like, it looks a bit like this weird guy in the front. The Dalai Lama had never even heard of this guy before. I'm not from a religious background, so I was like, maybe should I read this, should I not? And I read it, I was like, wow, it kind of like absolutely blew my mind. It was heading in the direction of in life, and then one book can kind of totally change your mindset and the way you think about things. So that's the power of a book. It's a bit like putting on a pair of glasses and seeing something completely different, changing your paradigm. So for me, this had an impact on me. So I read it in 2003, The Art of Happiness. So what is the Art of Happiness? So essentially, it's the main thing. It's how we perceive the situation. And before we go into that, stay right to the end where I'll give you the one main takeaway from this book. So my main big takeaway I'll reveal at the end. So the first one, and we're going to cover 3 points. So the first point we're talking about is essentially the art of happiness is how you perceive the situation. So the way you look at things can have an impact on how happy you are. So it's not necessarily the situation yourself, but you as an individual can actually choose how you perceive that situation, and in itself can bring you happiness, which for me that was a big mindset change. So it's not actually what's happening to you from the outside. You yourself as an individual have the choice to choose how you perceive that situation, how you can relate, and how you can have an impact on yourself and your situation. So my book, Millennial Money Mindset, one of the core themes is happiness, and essentially what I want the reader to get, I want you to read the book and have the same impact, to lead a happier life. So I started out writing the book about how to build wealth and how to kind of tips, hacks, and kind of principles that will improve your money and how you can increase your wealth. But as I wrote, and I kind of grew as a person, as a writer, and I actually thought it's much more important to focus on happiness rather than focusing on actually accumulating wealth. So essentially that leads us to the second point of this book. It's not necessarily about it's not about accumulating stuff. It's not about the consumerism. More stuff, we buy things and goods and cars and TVs, and it's not necessarily about that. It's not necessarily about more stuff to accumulate, to build up. This won't bring us happiness. So and it's more about. So point 2 is it talks more about. It's more about having a circle of friends, or being surrounded by people who know you and understand you, and it's more about having close-knit relationships with people, and rather than having more stuff, more TVs, more cars, more stereos that are going to fill up your house. So this was kind of the big takeaway for me, where it's not necessarily about having more stuff. So the next point he talks about is essentially we as humans, we have a mind, and we can choose. That's good enough for us to have. Once our basic needs are met, we have a mind, and that mind is all we need for happiness. So that might sound bizarre, and I'll maybe not explain it as well as it does in the book, but essentially once our basic needs are met, then we have a mind, and that's all we need for happiness. So I'd highly recommend this book. So the main point that I took was from this book. It is opening line, and essentially talks about the purpose of life is happiness. So what is the purpose of life? So many philosophers have talked about this over the years, and essentially the Dalai Lama talks about the main purpose of life is to seek happiness, and that's the main point. So I was lucky enough I sung happy birthday to the Dalai Lama, believe it or not. That might sound a bizarre story, but he came to Glastonbury. I was at a festival in Glastonbury. There's a festival in England called Glastonbury, and he came to the main stage, and it was Dalai Lama's birthday, and the whole crowd sung happy birthday to him. So that was my kind of claim to fame with the Dalai Lama. So yeah, just to summarize, so essentially happiness is the purpose of life, and that's quite deep and meaningful, but yeah, essentially that's what he's saying here. And I talk about that happiness in my book, Millennial Money Mindset. If you want the fruits, you need the roots. And I boil it down to happiness is purpose plus progress. And I talk more about what actually I mean by purpose and what I mean by progress in the book. So check it out, Millennial Money Mindset. If you want the fruits, you need the roots. It's available in audiobook, it's available in Kindle, and it's available in print. So the main points we talked about is in the book. So it's happiness is how we perceive a situation. So looking at our lives, and if we look back and we see ourselves as we've improved, then we are happier with ourselves. So he also talks about kind of feeling of contentment, so how content we are. So if we compare ourselves to our past selves and think we've improved, then we feel happy that we've actually made progress. So happiness is not necessarily about buying more stuff, more things. It could be about being around a circle of friends or that we trust, or being around people that we like, and being around family and friends. It's having relationships, not necessarily about having more things and how much more kind of stuff in our lives. Even though advertisers are kind of pump adverts at us to make us buy more things to kind of fuel the economy that's based on GDP. That's the only way we kind of measure how well the economy's doing, is to buy more things. But it's essentially a flawed measure in my opinion. So yeah, so essentially this book kind of blew my mind. At the time I was kind of backpacking in Australia and someone gave it to me. I would never have bought it myself. Look, I would think like, who's this weird guy on the front? But yeah, the Dalai Lama, he brings it's packed full of wisdom, super intelligent guy, and yeah, I was lucky enough to sing happy birthday to him. So yeah, check this book out. The link will be in the comments. So have you read this book? What do you think? What is the purpose of life for you? Have you read this book? Are there any other books that you've read that you would recommend? And what do you think happiness is? Do you think it's buying more things, or is it being surrounded by people, friends and family? Yeah. And yeah, please please comment. So my name is Neil Doig. I'm the author of Millennial Money Mindset. If you want the fruits, you need the roots. The creator of Football Formation, Asset Allocation, and the director of Money Tips, which stands for Tax, Investment, Property, Pension, Savings. We are a money coaching and edtech company. So we aim to help people make better decisions with their money, and we empower people to make their own decisions with money, so they can reduce their fees from paying expensive financial advisors. So yeah, please please subscribe, and please tell one person about Millennial Money Mindset. If you want the fruits, you need the roots.
Money Mindset.
I think that sounds alright.